They say heavy is the head that wears the crown. It's time we get bold and honest. Join me, your host, Latina, as we have real conversations revealing our unique womanhood narrative. You can find me beneath the crown. Hey, really quick. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. There are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer. How easy is that? Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can even make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. All you have to do is download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. That's downloading the free Anchor app or going to anchor.fm to get started. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Beneath the Crown podcast. I'm your host, Latina, and I'm so excited that you decided to come back for this conversation. So welcome, and let's go beneath the crown. So today on this episode, I want to talk about identity. And identity is defined as the fact of being who or what a person or thing is. It's also defined as the characteristics determining who or what a person or thing is. So I want to ask you, who are you? Who do you define yourself as being? What do you think about yourself? What do you say about yourself? And so, in the context of being a woman, I think this is really important. A lot of times we get so caught up in our identity, but are we really being caught up in our identity, or is it really that we're caught up in the perception that other people have of us? So I'll explain. So a lot of times when you meet a new woman as a friend or as a person presenting in the world, one of the first things that people say when they meet you, they're like, "Hey, how are you? Nice to meet you." And you exchange, your general pleasantries. And then one of the first questions that someone asks is, "So, are you married?" Or someone will say, "So do you have kids? Are you a mom?" And then once, they get the answers to those questions, then the next set of questions in a lot of cases is, "Oh, so where do you work? What do you do? So where do you live?" Um, and while to some people those questions may just seem so innocent and simple, and a lot of times they are innocent, but I feel like even in those particular questions, we have like our normative, I don't want to say normative life stages, but we have our kind of cultural, societal norms types of questions that we ask people to help create our perception of what their identity is. And a lot of times in answering those questions, unbeknownst to us, we are cultivating our own identity based on the perception that we think someone else wants to have of us. And so when I talk about identity, I think it's very important for us as women to kind of reevaluate ourselves and reevaluate what our identities are and who we are as just individuals. So, right now, if you're listening to me, you're in the car, or maybe you're at home, or you're, driving somewhere or exercising or what have you, just take a moment and just think about who you are. Ask yourself, who am I? And write down the answers that come to mind immediately when you ask yourself, who am I? I know when I first did this exercise, the first thing I wrote down was a lot of things. You write down that you're a mother, and you write down that you're a friend, and all of these things. And while those characteristics or those labels are true, that doesn't really comprise who you are as a person. That's not really your identity. And so I find that a lot of times as women, we put all of these various labels on ourselves that we can a lot of times forget who we are as people. So, when we introduce ourselves, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm a wife. I have, 4 children. I work at a Fortune 500 company. I'm an executive. And, you have all of these labels and you kind of just unbeknownst to yourself. Um, and subconsciously, you're just like spewing out all of these labels that you feel are helping to identify yourself, but it's really, like I stated before, just something that is helping the person that you're spewing out those labels to, helping to fit into their perspective or their perception of who they want to identify you to be. Um, so when I talk about identity, I think it's really important as women, especially as you kind of grow and mature in your journey, to really take an evaluation. And I would say take this evaluation maybe every 3 months, maybe every 6 months for some, or some people it's, every year. Kind of just sit down and do an assessment where you can say, who am I? If I take away all of the labels, if I take away all of the societal, expectations and perceptions, who am I as a person? And the answer to that question honestly will change, because I know for me, the woman that I was when I was in college is totally different from the woman that I am now. Um, and and that's okay. It's okay that you are growing and that you're evolving and that your identity is changing. But I think the most important thing is that you are aware of your identity. So, what are the characteristics that make you you without the label? So, what I mean is, for me, I'm a very caring person. I'm a very analytical person. I'm very detail oriented. I like to have fun. I like to read. I like to um, sing. Those are all characteristics that are a part of my identity, but they're not attached to any person or thing. And so I think that as women, it's very, very, very important for us to always think about what our identities are, take an assessment, write those down, and be very clear, because if we're not clear on who we are as women and what our identities are, then as we, start to put on those labels of, if you're a wife, if you're a mother, if you're a career woman, if you're a daughter, if you're a sister, you start putting on those labels and you honestly can get just so overwhelmed and so buried under those labels that you forget who you are. That's why you have so many women sometimes where they'll complain and say, "Oh, I have burnout," or "Oh, I'm just so tired," or "I just don't know myself anymore." I know for me, I have a son, and so after I had my son, you go through this whole experience as a new mom where you're just so excited to have a child, and you want to just be the best mom that you can be. And so you read all of the books, and look at all the videos, and just trying to do everything right. And so for the longest time, I found myself pouring all of myself into my son, which is not a bad thing. But I poured and I poured and I poured and I poured and I poured. And I just, trying to take him to different cultural events, and trying to just make sure that he experienced everything that there was to offer, that I honestly forgot who I was. I mean, to the point to the point where one day my mom came over to my house and she was like, "Girl, you need to comb your hair." Like, "Did you take a bath today? You need to get yourself together," because she, as an older woman, could identify that if if not her, then who? But it's like she identified that, okay, she needs someone, Latina needs someone to let her know and tell her, hey, it's great that you love your child. It's great that you want to be a great mom and you just want to spend every minute with him. It's great that you love your child that much, but you are still you. And you are still you aside from having the label of being someone's mother. And if you cannot connect with the things that make you you, then you can't be a great mom. And so it's been a journey for me, and it's something that is still a work in progress that I am learning, that my identity is not tied up in a label. It's not tied up in being a wife. It's not tied up in being someone's mother. It's not tied up in being someone's daughter, sister, friend, you know, career woman. It's not tied up in any of that. My identity is tied up in who I say I am, who I want to be, the characteristics that I want to display and present to the world, and what makes me unique. That's what my identity is. It's not another person. It's not another thing. And so, as women, sometimes you need somebody, whether it be your mom or your auntie or one of your best girlfriends, to say, girl, snap out of it. You need to get yourself together. You need to sit down and really take an evaluation and say, okay, well, who am I? What are the characteristics that make me unique, aside from all the labels that I have? Um, so I think that is something that's really key when it comes to your identity, because like I said, don't um if you don't take clear inventory of who you are as a person, you can totally lose yourself. Even though this is a presidential election, there are many more candidates on the ballot besides the president. Go to Ballot Ready for a nonpartisan guide to your entire ballot. From there, you can compare candidates based on stances on issues, biography, or endorsements, and then save your choices to use when you vote by mail or in the voting booth. You can even request your absentee ballot or make a plan to vote early or on election day. This election matters. Make sure you have a plan to vote and vote informed. This year, with changes to polling places and vote by mail laws as a result of COVID, it's more important than ever to have a plan to vote. Go to ballotready.org and enter your address to make a plan to vote and vote informed. That's ballotready.org. Enter your address to make a plan to vote and vote informed. You can totally lose yourself. And then not only will you lose yourself, but you'll just feel so unfulfilled at the end of the day by all of the labels. I have so many people that I know that, and this is not a knock at anyone who has decided to, advance in their careers, because I think that's brilliant. But I have a lot of people that I know that have decided to, you take on these big, high powered jobs, and doctors and lawyers and things like that. And then you get into those positions, you've worked so hard, you get into those positions and you work hard and you work your way up. And then you get there and it's just like, okay, this is so unfulfilling. This is just like another check off my box. I was reading Michelle Obama's book, Becoming, when it came out. I think it's been about 2 years ago now. And she talked in the book about how she was like the perpetual box checker. And so she talked about how she wanted to follow in the footsteps of her brother. I believe she went to Harvard, and he went to Harvard, and she went to Harvard. And she talked about how she was just wanting to just check the boxes of success, and she gave this very thought provoking concept where she said that you should not ask children what they want to be when they grow up. She said, because, a lot of times, and she gave the example of herself when she was a child, someone asked her, what does she want to be when she grew up? And she said that she wanted to be, I think she said she wanted to be a lawyer. And so the response that she got from the adult was something that she later determined in life that it helped to kind of shape her need for public validation. And so I thought that that was really key, because it's like, okay, even as young children, we are kind of programmed to look for the validation of other people to tell us what our identities should be based on their perception of what, success is, or what their perception of, achievement is, or what have you. And so I thought that that was really, really eye opening. And so going back to what she talked about being a perpetual box checker, she just talked about how once she had reached the height of success, in her in her 20s and her early 30s. She was working for a large law firm in the Chicago area. And she talked about how she just did not feel fulfilled. You know, she was driving the best car, she was wearing the nicest clothes, she had a nice apartment. Um, but she just talked about how she was not fulfilled because she was living her life under the expectations of other people, as it relates to her identity and what she should be doing based on their perception of her. And so it wasn't until she decided to leave her high paying job and she followed what her heart and her passion was, which was for community organizing and community engagement and involvement, that she went and work for a system that encouraged her to be able to flourish in what her gifts and her passion and her dreams were. And it is in those moments that she began to feel fulfilled and to really cultivate what her identity is. And so I think that that's really key and really important as women, that we, um, like I said before, just take an evaluation of what our identities are. What are the characteristics that make you you? What are the characteristics that make you unique? So, I read a quote, and I don't know who the quote is by, but I read a quote online and it said, stop relying on the world to tell you who you are. And I think that is so key. Stop relying on the world to tell you who you are. Um, you only know who you are, and you can only tell yourself what you like and what characteristics make you unique. And to be quite honest, those characteristics may change. You know, they change as we grow and as we evolve. So you may be a person that, 10, 15 years ago, you may not have been the most patient person, but as a result of, various life experiences, you have done a self evaluation and seen that, hey, I need to do some inner work to help me along this journey towards being more patient. And then 10, 15 years later, you're a more patient person. That's something that has helped to shape your identity. Those are some of the characteristics that you now have that you may not have had 10 or 15 years prior. And so I think that that's really key as women, because we cannot pour from an empty cup. And that has to do whether you have a significant other, whether you don't have a significant other, whether you have a child, just any way that you present in the world, you cannot pour from an empty cup. And so I think it's very key that while it is, great to um, achieve, it is great to achieve, but it's also key to take that time to take that evaluation of yourself, do like a checks and balances and say, okay, who am I? If I strip away all of the labels, if I am stripping those labels away and I'm introducing myself to a new person for the first time, what am I going to say? Am I going to say, hi, I'm Latina. I'm the mother of odd amount of kids, or I work, with this organization, or I live here, or I do that, or I do this? Or am I going to say, hey, I'm Latina, and you know what? I love to sing. I love to do crafts, and I'm a very creative person. I love to read. What book are you reading? Those are the types of things that give us more fulfillment in life, because if we just continue to just put our stock in the labels of life, when those labels are stripped away, then you can feel very empty. I think about a lot of times when people go through relationship issues. And, sometimes people can put so much emphasis on the fact that they're married. It's like, oh, yeah, I'm married and my husband this and my husband that. And while that's great, marriage is great. I'm a big proponent of marriage and love. Um, you are more than that label. And so a lot of times there is disappointment when you no longer have that label. And, someone says, well, are you married or what have you? And because you've put so much emphasis on it, when the label is, not there anymore, then a lot of times people just, go through a depression, or they go through a sense of loss, and not minimizing that loss because that is a loss, but I'm saying a sense of like a loss of their identity. And so if you if we're very careful and very mindful, I think is a good word, mindful of that we are not the labels that we put on ourselves as it relates to being attached to other people and things. So we are the labels that we put on ourselves that are attached to the innermost being of ourselves and the characteristics that make us the person and the women that we are, the queens that we are. So another word that comes to mind is authenticity. And authenticity is the courage to be yourself. And I think that if you don't walk away from this episode thinking about anything else, I want you to think about this and I want you to repeat this after me and write it down so that you can um, always remember this. Repeat it to yourself and always think about, um, am I being myself? Ask yourself that, you know. And if you ask yourself, am I being myself? Then ask yourself, well, who am I? You know, because if you don't know who you are, then how can you determine or evaluate whether or not you are being authentic? So, again, authenticity is the courage to be yourself. So I want to encourage you all to just be yourself. I want to encourage you to take some evaluation, take some quiet time to really sit down and journal. I'm a big proponent of journaling. Sit down and write down, who am I? You know, at the top of your page, who am I? What is my identity? Am I being myself? Am I authentic? You know, it does take courage to be yourself, because a lot of times, like I said, we can present in the world who we are